restaurant in a red dress I'd never seen, a man's hand resting on the small of her back. The post was fresh. She was there right now. And behind our bedroom door, nothing but an empty bed. The photo was posted by a guy I used to work with at Hargrave Engineering, just a wide shot of his dinner table. Jolene wasn't tagged. She wasn't even the subject. She just happened to be sitting 2 tables behind him with a man whose hand rested on her like he'd done it 100 times before. Their heads tilted close, and whatever she was laughing at, it wasn't a migraine. 7 months she'd been careful. But you can't control every stranger with a camera phone in a crowded restaurant. Here's the thing. I almost drove straight there. Keys in my hand, shoes on. But somewhere between the front door and the driveway, I stopped. Not because I was scared. Because I'd been an engineer long enough to know what happens when you rush a fix before you understand the problem. If I walked in there, it'd be a scene. Tears, denials, he's just a friend. And by next week, she'd have every track covered so clean, I'd never find another thing. So I put the keys back on the hook, sat down, and opened Instagram again. Screenshot first. Her face, the dress, his hand, the timestamp. Then I zoomed in on the guy. Dark hair, athletic build, early 40s. Nobody I recognized. The restaurant's tag location gave me what I needed after 10 minutes. Another photo from 2 weeks earlier, different user, different angle, same 2 people near the bar. Jolene in a blue top, same man beside her. 2 Friday nights. Same restaurant. Same man. That's a routine. She came home a little after midnight. I heard the back door ease shut, then the soft click of her heels coming off in the hallway. By the time she slipped into bed, I had my eyes closed, breathing slow and steady like I'd been out for hours. She didn't say a word, just pulled the covers up and turned away. Saturday morning, she came into the kitchen smiling, stretching, telling me the migraine finally broke around 10 and she slept like the dead after that. Poured herself coffee and kissed me on the cheek. I watched her face while she talked, not a single crack. 24 years of marriage, and she lied to me the way you'd comment on the weather. Easy. Practiced. I didn't confront her. Instead, I told her I had to run out and help a coworker with a project estimate. She barely looked up from her phone. I drove to our street, parked 3 houses down behind Gary Kimball's boat trailer where I had a clear line of sight to our driveway, and waited. 40 minutes. That's all it took. Jolene walked out in yoga pants and a tank top, tossed a gym bag into her white Kia, and pulled out heading east. I gave her a 2-block lead and followed. She drove straight to a residential complex on the east side of Raleigh, one of those newer 3-story buildings with balconies, the kind that went up during the construction boom a few years back. I parked across the street near a tire shop and watched through the windshield. A man came out of a ground floor unit before she even reached the door. Same guy from the Instagram photos. No question about it. He wrapped his arms around her, hand landing right where it had been at the restaurant, low on her back like it lived there. She leaned into him without hesitation, and they disappeared inside together. I sat there just long enough to do what I needed. Took photos of the building number, the unit on the door, her white Kia parked in the visitor's spot, and the 2 of them standing at the entrance before they went in. For clean shots, each one time-stamped. Then I put my Silverado in drive, pulled out of the tire shop lot, and headed home without looking back. No yelling, no door kicking, no confrontation in a parking lot with my hands shaking. That wasn't the play. I had 2 sets of proof now, Instagram and my own eyes, and the investigation was finished. Everything from this point forward wasn't about finding the truth. It was about making the truth cost her. Monday I needed a name. I drove back to the complex during lunch while Jolene was at work, caught the front door behind a woman carrying groceries, and checked the mailboxes along the lobby wall. The unit I'd watched her enter had a label, R. Delgado. RAF. The trainer Jolene had mentioned casually over the past several months. My trainer Raf says I should increase my protein. That kind of thing dropped into conversation like it meant nothing. 7 months she'd been going to his studio, and that name had floated through our house without ever setting off an alarm. Now it set off everything. That afternoon I met with a family law attorney named Becca Stokes, someone my buddy Dean had used. 1 meeting, 30 minutes, no wasted time. I laid out the facts and she laid out the path. Divorce papers ready by Friday. On the house, my position was strong. The down payment came from my savings, and I'd covered most of the mortgage ever since, all documented. Then I pulled 6 months of statements from our joint checking account and handed them over. And that's where Becca's eyebrows went up. For 7 months, Jolene had been paying Raf's studio amounts well above the listed price of any package on his website. The overpayments were consistent and not small, family money flowing to her lover, month after month. In North Carolina, wasting shared money on an affair matters when a judge splits the assets. Becca documented every dollar. Now here's where I made my move. That same evening I sat across from Jolene at dinner and brought up Shelby. Said we hadn't seen her in weeks. Why don't we invite her down for Saturday night? Cook something nice. Make it a family thing. Jolene's face lit up. She called Shelby right there at the table, put her on speaker, and the three of us picked a time. Shelby said she'd drive down from Durham after work. Jolene had no idea what she'd just agreed to. She thought she was planning a family dinner. What she was actually doing was inviting the one person whose opinion she couldn't afford to lose, her own daughter, to sit at the same table where I was going to ask her one simple question. No crowd needed, no drama. Just Shelby hearing her mother's answer and then seeing the truth. The rest of the week, I went through the motions. Ate breakfast with Jolene, asked about her day, watched TV on the couch while she scrolled her phone. She had no reason to suspect anything. I hadn't changed a single habit, hadn't dropped a single hint. By Friday, the divorce papers were sitting in Becca's office, ready to be filed the minute I gave the word. The trap was set. All that was left was Saturday. Shelby arrived around 6. Jolene had gone all out. Brisket, cornbread, peach cobbler cooling on the counter. She was in a great mood, telling Shelby about her fitness routine, how the studio had changed her energy. I let her talk. Shelby listened, picked at her cornbread. Halfway through dinner, I set my fork down and looked at Jolene. Kept my voice level. Hey, 2 Fridays ago, you said you had a migraine and went to bed early. Where were you actually? The table went quiet. Jolene smiled like I'd asked something silly. I was home, Wade. In bed. You know that. She held my eyes when she said it, then glanced at Shelby with a shrug. I pulled out my phone, opened the first screenshot, and slid it across the table to our daughter. The restaurant photo, her mother in a red dress, a man's hand on her back, the Friday timestamp. Before Jolene could say a word, I opened the second photo. Jolene at Raf's door, his arm around her, her Kia in the lot the very next morning. You just lied to your daughter's face. 5 seconds ago. And there it is. Jolene's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked at Shelby, then at me, and for the first time in 24 years, I watched her run completely out of moves. No story, no spin, just silence, and the sound of Shelby pushing her chair back from the table. Shelby left without saying goodbye to either of us. Jolene locked herself in the bedroom. I sat in the living room listening to the clock on the mantel, and that's when 2 weeks of discipline cracked down the middle. Raf Delgado's number was right on his studio's website. I wasn't supposed to call. The plan was clean. Lawyer, documents, silence. But sitting in that quiet house after watching my daughter walk out without a word, something broke loose. All the control I'd carried just evaporated, and before I could think it through, I had the phone to my ear. He picked up on the third ring. I didn't yell. I'll give myself that much. But I told him who I was. Told him I knew where he lived, that I'd tracked every dollar my wife had funneled into his business, and that by month's end he'd be nothing but a line item in a divorce filing. It was cold, direct, and the dumbest thing I'd done in years. Because Raf recorded the call. Every word. By Sunday morning, Jolene knew I'd contacted him, and by Monday her attorney was framing it as harassment, proof that I was unstable and aggressive. Becca didn't sugarcoat it. She leaned forward across the desk. That phone call was a gift to their side, Wade. No more contact with him. Not a text, not a look. We were clear, but the damage was already sitting in their evidence folder. Jolene came out swinging. By Wednesday, her attorney had filed a response claiming she was entitled to half the house. Purchased during the marriage, community effort, the standard argument. On top of that, she wanted spousal support, citing a lower income. And she had the recording of my call to Raf as evidence of threatening and erratic behavior. On paper, it looked bad. I'd spent 2 weeks building a clean case and then handed her ammunition with one angry phone call at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. Becca told me straight, if this were the only evidence on the table, we'd be fighting uphill. But here's what Jolene didn't know, what her attorney hadn't seen yet. Becca filed our counterclaim the following Monday, and attached to it were 7 months of bank statements from our joint account. Every payment to Raf's studio was highlighted, with the actual membership rates pulled from his website printed right alongside them. The overpayments were consistent and significant. Not a rounding error, not a premium package. Family money, sent straight to a romantic partner during an active affair. In North Carolina, the court takes that seriously when a judge splits the assets. Jolene's attorney saw those numbers, and the tone of the negotiation changed overnight. The math was simple. My one angry phone call was bad, but Jolene's 7 months of siphoning family money to her lover was worse. A judge would note both, but one emotional outburst doesn't balance against systematic financial misconduct. Becca laid it out in a settlement proposal that was firm but not vindictive. The house stays with me. Jolene receives her share of joint assets minus the documented overpayments. We go our separate ways. It wasn't a knockout. She'd still walk away with money. But the house was mine, and that was the thing I'd been fighting for since the night I saw that Instagram post. A few days into the back and forth between attorneys, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Raf. "Hey man, she told me you two were already separating. I didn't know the full situation. I'm sorry it went down like this." The classic exit speech. "I didn't know. It's not my fault. Let's all move on." I typed back one line. "You knew she was married. You took her money, and now you're blocked." Sent it, blocked his number, and set my phone on the counter. That was the last I ever heard from Raf Delgado. He blocked Jolene too, disappeared from her life the same way he'd slipped into it, without a trace of commitment. For him, it was never serious. Just a woman who paid above market rate for his attention. The person I didn't hear from right away was Shelby. 4 days of silence after that dinner. No calls, no texts. I didn't push it. She'd earned the right to process this however she needed. When she finally called, it wasn't to take my side. Her voice was steady, but the hurt ran underneath it. "Why did you do that at dinner, Dad? Why with me sitting right there? You could have told me first instead of turning it into some kind of reveal." I told her the truth. I wanted her to see it herself, not hear my version or her mother's, but watch in real time when Jolene had the chance to be honest and chose not to be. I told her the way I handled it was harder than it needed to be. I didn't apologize for the truth, but I owned the delivery. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said something that stuck with me since. I'm not picking sides, but I watched her lie straight to my face, and I can't unhear that. A pause. "I'll talk to both of you, but it's different now." And it was. Over the next few weeks, Shelby stayed in touch with Jolene. Short calls, surface-level stuff. With me, the conversations got longer and easier. Not because I won something, but because I hadn't lied to her. That's a low bar. But in this family, apparently, it was enough. A month after the divorce was final, I loaded a disassembled bookshelf and a toolbox into the bed of my Silverado and headed west on I-40 toward Durham. Shelby had just signed a lease on a new apartment, her first real place on her own, and she'd asked if I could come help put some furniture together. On the way, I stopped at the office of the title company off Capitol Boulevard. The refi had been moving since the settlement. Today was just the last signature. 5 minutes, 1 pen, and the house was in my name only. The last document that still carried Jolene's name on anything connected to my life. I walked out, folded the paperwork into my glove box, and pulled back onto the highway. Somewhere around the Durham exit, my phone lit up with a text from Shelby. "Got ribs and charcoal. The balcony grill is tiny, but we'll make it work." I smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks, merged into the left lane, and pressed the gas a little harder. In the rearview mirror, Raleigh was already just a skyline